The hero is addressed and called a dormice. Then they ask how long he is going to sleep. He shares that he has the same dream every night. Every time in his dreams, he sees a boy with disheveled brown hair and a dark red scarf that is tied around his neck. The young man is happy to see him. He sits on the windowsill and asks if he is ready to move out. He calls the hero to go on a journey. Other participants have noticed a new person and are curious if this is really the same Leo or if it is just another dream. A man with a mohawk and iron armor in his arms was surprised that the boy dared to challenge him to a fight, believing that he had steel balls. It didn't matter if it was all real or not. The man shouts that the enemy should prepare for death because he is iron-handed Danny. Each dream of the hero was about meeting Leo. His opponent was already in a jump to attack the boy, but he thought that he was too slow and struck him on the head. The observers were surprised at how he was able to destroy his opponent with one blow. They were curious who this young participant was. He seemed dangerous to them. Leo was ready for the next battle. He was already tired of all this, and he wanted to move on to the strongest guy as soon as possible. He saw a man in a white t-shirt standing nearby and assumed that he was the strongest opponent of the remaining. But in fact, he was not talking to the same Ronnie from Korea with a huge torso like an elephant and very thin legs, with bulging eyes and a very distinctive slit on the chin, not to mention a square skull and pointed cheeks. It was the body of a person who was possessed by his soul. Such characters appear only once to fly away from the main character in one blow. His character was a bad guy, no 3. A special feature was a little strength. He became a stupid guy who will appear only in the first chapter. Ronnie had his hand on the cover of the book. For him, this story called The King of Adventure was a very valuable new world. The story of a boy who travels the world through beautiful lands filled with incredible characters. He did not believe that this was the end. The hero could not understand why the author decided to kill Lucas, and why he could not be left until the end of the novel. The story ceased to be miraculous for him. In the comic, there was a scene of the death of the fallen knight Lucas. A man in armor was suddenly killed by the author of the comic. He was his favorite character in The Adventure King, and he considered Lucas to be a badass antagonist and the most popular character in the manhwa. According to the results of the 7th poll for the title of the most popular hero from history, the antagonist scored the highest number of points than the rest. He was an evil character that the author killed right before the climax of his story. Lucas was bleeding on the pages of the comic. He was the first. With him, a series of murders of everyone in a row began. The author stated that the characters were intended only for one-time use. Ronnie did not understand what the phrase that only they were responsible for their lives meant, because if the author continued to draw them, they could live on. Over the course of 10 years, about 60 volumes were published. The hero decided to write a letter to the author where he shared his experiences. He also promised to stop reading the whole story and said that if he saw someone selling the entire collection of the novel, it would be him. The hero began to doubt whether he had written the letter too rudely, but decided that the author would most likely not see this message anyway. After all, he could sue him for trampling on the feelings of readers, so the author should have been glad that he just wrote an angry letter. Deciding that at such moments, he just needs to reread the chapters in which the main antagonist first appeared, he opened the book again. When suddenly a notification came to his phone, Ronnie noticed that he had received a new message saying that the author of The King of Adventures was not lying. He also argued that the characters should do everything in their power to survive, which was the first response from him in 10 years. And the fallen knight did not cope with this task, so the author decided to offer to try his hand. This was the last message from him. From that very moment, the hero's whole life turned upside down. Leo was again able to win the battle with the strongest of those present. He noted that it was other characters who told him that in order to go further, he first needed to deal with them and urged them not to leave him. Ronnie, meanwhile, was worried that he had fallen into the body of the bad guy No. 3. It seemed to him that even the style of his speech had changed, and this was still the first chapter. One of the characters rushed into battle with Leo. He warned that they would not joke with him anymore and revealed that the previous participant was the weakest of them. The ironclad boy was delighted at this arrangement and immediately struck the new opponent with his hand so that he flew away. While he was flying away, he shouted that he would come back and fight him. Ronnie noticed a sign with the inscription initialization. He was interested in it. Seeing a large house in the distance, he realized that this was the starting point of Leo's story, as well as the story arc of the first chapter of the first volume. He had no doubt that he was in the world of the Adventure King comic. It seemed to him that he was doing damn badly. His hero was a bad guy. No. 3, without much power in favor of the author, his task was to fill the pages of history with himself and live to the finale. He didn't understand how, as a character who would be knocked out in one blow in the first chapter, he had to carve out plot time for himself and try to survive. Ronnie was furious that in this way, the author took revenge on him for deciding not to read the adventure comic anymore. The rest of the characters were happy to hear his angry words and supported his rage and promised to stay with him. Approaching the hero, they offered him to fight Leo. They had previously told him about the boy and asked him to take care of it and teach him a lesson. They stated that bad guy No 3 was the younger brother of their boss in town, and that Leo wasn't worth a penny compared to him. The hero could not understand how the author infused his soul into the body of this big man. He would be very annoyed by what is happening. Leo heard about the city and assumed that if he went there, he would meet stronger guys there. Ronnie believed that the author just wanted to make him suffer. Ronnie headed towards the enemy. He stretched his arms on the way to him, trying to come up with a plan for his story. It seemed to him that the writer was now laughing maliciously because he had stuffed the hero's soul into the body of a disposable character. He came close to Leo and asked him if he really wanted to go further. He still considered his task impossible to complete. The red-haired boy suggested that his next opponent would be a bad guy in the person of Ronnie, but he had already decided that he would not allow the plot to go according to the author's idea. But the main character was not going to fight the boy. He stopped him on a friendly note with a raised palm and said that he just wanted to say something to him. Since by moving such an ardent fan as him into his story, the author made a terrible mistake in his opinion. There were multiple warnings about fixing an attempt to disrupt the flow of history, and that Ronnie's actions were against the established rules. And as a punishment, he was notified that he would be forcibly immobilized for 10 seconds. Leo was already holding his hands in clenched fists. He himself was already fully prepared for the fight. Everything around him lit up red, as well as his eyes sparkled with an angry red color. Ronnie knew that if they started fighting, it might be over for him before he could do anything, and would simply be cut out of the story. Leo has already aimed for his next devastating blow to another secondary character, but he noticed that the hero is not moving at all. Realizing that he was not going to resist at all, he stopped his fist a centimeter away from Ronnie's face, who clearly felt a bloodlust from Leo. The hero did not understand what the established rules meant, because this confrontation with the boy was a real death sentence. Ronnie couldn't believe that there was nothing he could do to change the course of the manhwa plot, while the rest of the characters decided to fight Leo. He began to realize that the author wanted the hero to experience this particular moment of the comic, where this strange boy goes crazy and blows everyone around. But the first chapter should demonstrate to the reader how strong Leo is, and the hero needed to survive in such a way that Leo would remain the winner. Then the hero decided to try just not to fight him, hoping that as soon as he scattered the rest of the characters, he would forget about him. The rest of the guys had previously insisted that Ronnie fight the boy. In other words, they had placed their hopes in him, in order for him to humbly wait for his turn. But Ronnie saw through the author's whole plan and was not going to give up so easily. He didn't want Leo to use his character to demonstrate his strength on him. One of the characters couldn't believe that Leo was able to defeat the black-blooded fist, and also considered Leo a monster. The others asked Ronnie what they should do. The hero said that the boy was lucky. It so happened that he had a stomachache and therefore he had absolutely no intention of fighting him. He then clarified that he never fights unless he is at the peak of his power, but Leo noticed that the hero's veins were shaking. Ronnie decided to add that the red-haired boy in armor was not more important to him than the daily chores, and advised him to go and do something else. At first, Leo was taken aback and could not understand how to react to this, but then he was glad that the hero decided not to fight him. He also hinted that the boy should be grateful that he decided to let him go. Leo was glad to meet this nice guy. After that, the boy decided to leave and said goodbye to the hero, who was already proud that Leo recognized the bad guy, starting his adventures. But Ronnie had already made a plan in his head. He promised that he would return to fight him, and he would not get rid of him so easily next time. A notification appeared that the first chapter of the prelude to the adventures was completed, and the author calculated the final value of the characters. There was also an offer to check the details about the character of the hero, he thought for a moment, but then saw a change in his description. It seems that after each chapter, the description of the characters changes. His popularity has grown, albeit not much, and another feature has appeared. But the chance of reappearing in the story was still at 0. Then there was the removal of characters, and the decision was made to remove the bad guy. In the next notification, the hero saw that the deletion of his character had been postponed, and the lifespan had been extended to the 3rd chapter. As soon as Ronnie realized that his removal had been postponed and he was able to survive, he was very happy about his unexpected passage. He silently rejoiced and squealed with joy. Although he knew that he would have to prove his worth before the end of the third chapter, he could still fly out. He then notices that the boss and the rest of the bad guys have been sent off, and if he doesn't prove his importance, then he will face the same fate. Ronnie was angry when he realized that he had been thrown into the King of Adventure because of that message to the author, and thought that he was taking revenge on him. The guy had no idea why he got into this ridiculous world, but at the same time, he realized that he definitely had to try to survive until the end of the story. His primary goal was to increase the chances of respawning, which was essentially a chance of survival after all. He needed to raise the turnout rate to at least 50 at all costs. It drove him crazy, and he promised that if he met the author, he would kill him. It seemed to him an extremely difficult task, but there had to be a way out, fortunately. The world of the King of Adventures was very familiar to him. The hero began to think about his next steps. The body of a villain like him, which was intended for a one-time appearance, could win. As suddenly, he remembered that there was something like character points in the story and was able to open the manual for the store. But it was impossible to use the store in the middle of the chapter, and then there was a description of each product and its cost. There were 3 categories in the store: character stats, chapter, and special. Ronnie decided to reveal details about the stats. An image of a person appeared on the screen, and an inscription explaining the characteristics of the character of the bad guy. No 3 flashed. With the help of character points, you could change the story, abilities, appearance, and other characteristics. It was possible to choose one of the proposed characters and completely change your story, and gain the inherent abilities of the character. Suddenly, he stumbled upon a familiar character. It was the fallen knight Lucas, the same one because of whom he wrote an angry letter to the author of the comic. Ronnie was very happy about this opportunity and decided that he should definitely buy it, but as soon as he tried to do so, a notification appeared. This was a warning to the system that the product could not be applied because the character's status was too low. The hero was upset that he could not just buy what he wanted, so he decided to upgrade himself and change the equipment to a more suitable one. He then decided to change the character to a copycat acrobat who could imitate the abilities of others, but he couldn't surpass them. The guy decided to name him Mimi. He used to mock Leo because copying the abilities of the main character is a real deception, and the fact that the conditions of the imitation are hidden was not a problem for the hero at all, since he had already managed to read the whole story to the end. Ronnie touched the projection of his favorite character. He asked to wait for him, and then promised that he would definitely find him. Even though Ronnie survived, he was still in danger of being removed. And thanks to the ability to change characteristics, he could no longer be the bad guy. In the process, he will have to use his brain. After these reflections, the hero decided to go to the 3rd chapter of the adventures. After much deliberation, he decided to skip the 2nd chapter in order to immediately fight in the 3rd, and then opened the table of contents of the novel and selected a category. It made no sense for him to go to the 2nd chapter, where Leo would fight everyone again. The system offered him to purchase a transfer to the location of the chapter. Ronnie had one specific reason why he went straight to chapter 3. He desperately wanted to acquire the character of the fallen knight Lucas. He really wanted to build up his advantage, as he couldn't change the course of the plot at the very beginning of the 1st chapter. In addition, in the 3rd chapter, Leo's first companion, Kiro, appears, so the hero confidently chose Virgin City as a new location. Kiro was a mad gunslinger from Virgin City. He was the first partner, both friend and enemy, as well as the rival of the main character. According to the unspoken rules, they constantly quarrel. Leo did not understand how Kiro could harm people, and Kiro believed that the boy was getting in the way under his feet. Once they became enemies, and an explosive catharsis began between them, a process of releasing emotions, resolving internal conflicts and exaltation. Ronnie didn't know where to look for Kiro. According to the setting, he was the main villain in the city, but no one had heard anything about him. The man had quieted down lately. Then the hero suggested that he might be able to find him in another place. He had one reason why he wanted to meet him and not Leo. Since Kiro was the main character in the 3rd chapter, Ronnie entered the diner and was greeted at the entrance. His main plan was to become Kiro's assistant and increase his chances of reappearing in the story. He had to give his best in the chapter. The hero was upset that he had not done anything in the last 2 days and thought that he would die with such success. A mug of beer was placed in front of him. The girl noticed that he was worried and that he was thinking about many things and was glad that he had dropped in on her if her suspicions were correct. She greeted him in her establishment. Ronnie immediately recognized her face as Rosemary and noted that she looked very cute, which greatly embarrassed her. Rosemary took him by surprise. He was jealous that he didn't even have a name, and she had an incredibly beautiful design. Then the guy turned the shooting to an empty table and asked where the character who was always sitting there was. The owner of the establishment assumed that no one liked that place because it was a corner place. Ronnie asked if anyone was sitting there or not, but he was completely sure that Kiro was always sitting there. The girl decided to ask where the guy came from, since she saw him for the first time. Ronnie is surprised that the story is changing, as the chapter begins with the villain pointing a gun at his enemy, saving the girl from his annoying attention. It all started with the enemy Kiro planning Rosemary, and immediately after he slept her, she was bewitched by him and very grateful for his help. The hero realized that the main villain in the story had not yet met the girl, apparently due to the fact that the third chapter had not yet begun, and violently slammed his fist on the table. He didn't understand why so much time had passed since reading the first chapter and considered it a waste of time, and began to think about where he could find Kiro. The girl watched the guy with interest, assuming that he was very excited about something, and offered to drink a drink that would save him from bad thoughts. It was a special honey beer, the pride of her establishment. It was especially good for a downtrodden head. The guy was always curious, as this kind of comic book required eating and drinking beer, and as soon as he tasted it, he was delighted. Rosemary was delighted to realize that the customer liked the drink so much that he wanted to try everything. In order to survive, he needed to increase his chances of reappearing and protect his rights to exist in the manhwa. But at the same time, he wanted to go back to his world and do one important thing, namely to beat the author well. This was the moment when he made a decision. The second chapter, called The Stupid Bandit, was completed. The hero realized that the chapters had finally begun to change. Ronnie decided to go to the Tower of Virgin City, where the head office of the city mafia was located. They were enemies of Kiro and probably knew something about him. At the entrance, he was stopped by two security guards. One of them, with tattoos all over his body, stopped the guy and asked who he was and where he was going. The hero explained that he had come there to meet with the manager, but they did not know him, and therefore asked again who he was and give his name. Deciding to activate his enhanced bluff special ability, he asked them again if they were sure they wanted to hear it, and then hinted that they were in danger. He introduced himself as a representative of a red scorpion, which seriously surprised the guards. They did not understand what he had forgotten near their office. It was a fictional organization, and its first appearance in history. The guards immediately asked him to follow them to escort him to the chief. The guy was very happy that his ability worked in all its glory and thereby helped him achieve what he wanted. When suddenly a man appeared out of nowhere and noted that he had never seen the hero before, Ronnie was surprised, since according to the plot there should not have been anyone there. Turning around, he immediately recognized him as the main villain with red hair and a gun in his hand. He forced the guy to sit on his knees and kept his hand on his head. The villain had heard that his enemy was there, but in his opinion there was only a bunch of unimportant characters. The guards shouted in rage, not expecting him to appear. Approaching the protagonist, they asked him to teach Kiro a lesson and tried to warn the man that he should be ready. Kiro believed that he was a gangster, but it turned out that he was considered the boss and assumed that they must know where his main enemy was. The guards immediately decided to engage him in battle and offered the hero to rest on the sidelines. As they wanted to deal with him themselves, Ronnie tried to stop them. They didn't have much choice, so they wanted to deal with it quickly, while believing that they had every chance of destroying it. But just a moment later, they were both already defeated and lying on the ground, writhing in pain. The hero did not expect such a turn. He was left alone. Kiro turned to him asking if he was the boss, but the guy stopped him, holding out his hand and asking him to wait, as he wanted to say something. The villain assumed that he wanted to admit that he was scared, but Ronnie tried to explain that he was not part of their gang, but was an outsider. The man did not make much difference from this. Then the hero continued to lie and said that he was not a member of the mafia, but belonged to the International Council. He had heard earlier that the hero was a red scorpion and did not believe his words, but Ronnie explained that it was a cover, and he had come to help him. Continuing to lie every time he opened his mouth, he stated that he knew Kiro would be there, and therefore expected to see him there, knowing that it was all about Leo, and it was because of this that the villain came to the Bloody Mafia. He told all this to the man, who listened attentively. He then noted that Kiro is playing the role of an infamous hero, only to get rid of Leo in an attempt to destroy every member associated with him. Realizing that the lie was working and perhaps there was another effect, he continued and just wanted to say that he knew where the boy was when the notification came. The third chapter was approaching, which meant that the character's shop would soon be closed. He had to hurry, the hero screamed in surprise. He could not understand how the second chapter ended so quickly, and the man was surprised by the sudden change in the mood of the interlocutor and his sudden shout. Also, Kiro was right there in front of him, so he couldn't understand how a new character could appear in this chapter. Immediately suspect that Leo had a temporary enhancement of his capabilities. He could start the next chapter at any time. The whole plot existed for him alone. Ronnie, after some time after these reflections, was able to realize that it was a world within the manhwa that he had read in his previous world. In this world, the location changed in one frame. After Leo went on new adventures, he and his gang arrived at the sea. The hero shouted the villain's name loudly again, which made him a little dumbfounded, and then wondered why he suddenly yelled at him again. Trying to warn the main villain that they couldn't stay there and had to go, he only made Kiro doubt his words more. Kiro could really doubt the veracity of the hero's words, because first he called himself a representative of a red scorpion, and then a secret agent. Some guy he hadn't met before knew his name and therefore began to raise doubts from the very beginning. A man with red eyes held a gun pointed at the hero and demanded that he tell him who he really was. The hero really wanted to admit that he knew everything that would happen in the future in history, but instead he replied that he was a man who pinned his hopes on him. Gathering courage, Ronnie took the barrel of the gun and asked the man to trust him. They could talk later, and now someone came for Kiro. Realizing that the hero does everything that comes to his mind, he decided to clarify that he meant that someone came for him. Ronnie repeated that he had said exactly what he meant, that someone had come for Kiro, but the man couldn't understand what he was talking about. The guy explained that Kiro needed to get rid of the mafia who had been sent to his soul. There was the guy he was desperately trying to find among them. He was referring to the blonde man who had previously put 2 bullets in his stomach. Kiro heard attentively, still smoking a cigarette in the cigarette holder. Kiro was tense that the stranger knew about everything, but the hero explained that he had just done an investigation and suggested that he hurry up so as not to miss it. But the man was not going to lower his weapon. He desperately wanted to know where these guys were so that he could do something with them. The hero recalled that he had already said that he was his assistant, and therefore immediately told him the place to go. It was the square. The main villain did not understand how the guy could have learned this information, but Ronnie considered the explanations unnecessary and then pushed Kiro and hurried him up. Ronnie then mentioned that he couldn't imagine what the blonde man would do there and asked the man to take care of him this time. The villain was still in a lost state, not understanding what was happening and what the hero was talking about, but the guy was already leaving and promised to find him later. Kiro went to the square and was a little surprised that the stranger was right, and he was able to finally find the blonde man who was already begging for mercy. Other eyewitnesses ran to the square, watching as Kiro held his enemy at gunpoint while he begged for mercy and release. Ronnie came running just in time, glad he wasn't too late. Kiro offered to let the enemy live only if one person decided to die in his place. He noticed that the picture changed as soon as the new chapter began, which meant that he would be able to see the legendary moment with his own eyes from the inside. 2 defeated people and a blonde man who had been pointed at a gun were already lying in the square. Ronnie was very happy that his wish was being fulfilled. The villain pulled the trigger and asked about his enemy's last words, when suddenly Leo appeared, who shouted for Kiro to stop. But he would not be in the mood to end his revenge, and so they entered the battle. Leo swung his leg to deliver his deadly blow. Ronnie watched the battle of the 2 heroes with great interest. Leo shouted that it was impossible to point a weapon at a person and that Kiro was not all right with his head. Kiro got really angry and released 3 paths that swept by Leo's side. He thought the guy was an ignorant puppy. After the villain hinted that Leo was not doing his job, he continued to shoot, but the main character of the comic quickly avoided the bullets. Realizing that he was not facing an easy opponent, he decided to use devilish paralytic bullets, but Leo was sure that there was a limit to the villain's abilities. Delivering a powerful blow, he caused a whole explosion, which greatly surprised the hero, and Kiro admitted that he did not understand where the boy had such powers, but considered him annoying. It was the destructive power of the protagonist. Kiro activated his unique ability and advised Leo to dodge bullets, or else he might die. Leo was not going to give up. He activated his unique ability of catastrophically exterminating lightning and told the villain to dodge himself. The main antagonist repeated one last time that the main character should start dodging his red-hot shots, but the boy was sure that he would be faster. Ronnie thought for a moment that if he had attacked Leo in the first chapter, then most likely his character would have already been erased from history. The main enemies met each other in battle, using all their might. But Leo was able to defeat Kiro with literally 1 blow, which he did not expect. Kiro fell to his knees, blood flowing from his mouth, and he accepted his defeat. Ronnie continued to admire that he could observe everything with his own eyes. But he was there for decoration. No one noticed him. Rosemary ran into the square. She shouted at Leo, accusing him of beating her savior. The girl bent over the body of the villain. She cried and said that the blonde man annoyed her and why Mr. Kiro was beaten. The man asked not to shake him. After all, he was not dead yet. So the girl happily screamed his name and rushed to him with an embrace. She was very glad that her savior did not die, as did everyone around her who was watching, including the hero who decided that it was time for him to move on. He needed to get into the cutscene by any means possible and managed to remain invisible in the scene where the blonde man was surprised that Kiro did not die and called out to him. The people watching the battle saw Rosemary thanking the villain for saving her, and it began to dawn on them that he was doing all this to protect her. Leo was glad that the red hair wasn't such a bad guy. Kiro had tried to tell him that earlier, while Ronnie was never revealed. The villain believed that the boy did not try to understand him. The man had already begun to leave, which upset the girl, and the hero tried to shout to him. Kiro hoped that this adventure would be fun. The guy continued to scream in the hope of another meeting, but he decided to go on a trip with Leo. Rosemary could hardly hold back her tears. Seeing off her hero, she asked him to take care of himself wherever he went. Ronnie was still screaming with the hope of being noticed. Leo took the first step towards a new adventure with a mad shooter. They said goodbye to the characters and thanked the girl for the food. The observers also shouted after them. The hero watched as the main character went on order with his new friend and could not believe that this was the end, especially after everything he's been through, but the guy felt like his character's departure was waiting for him when suddenly Kiro turned around and thanked him for his help. Despite the fact that the hero seemed to him too talkative, he turned out to be quite useful to him and promised to remember his unexpected assistant. Calling Ronnie a stubborn chin goodbye, he left, and the hero smiled contentedly and said goodbye to him with satisfaction. The third chapter of The Mad Gunslinger of Virgin City has been completed, The Information of the Bad Boy. No 3 character has been updated. Firstly, he changed his name to the one that Kiro came up with for him, as well as a significant increase in recognition and a little chance of reappearing. And while his character was still slated for removal, it was renewed again to Chapter 7 and also received points. The delayed removal was quite logical from the writer's point of view, but he had not yet had time to fully reveal his character, because he had done almost nothing. Either way, he felt a kind of relief, as he didn't have to worry about his disappearance for a few more chapters. As Kiro and Leo fought, Ronnie noticed something surprising. He overheard the other 2 characters discussing the unique abilities given only to the strong. He suggested that this is where the real story begins, which meant that there would be characters with unique abilities of a high rank. If the main character lags behind in strength, then it will be very difficult for him to exist in the story, let alone reappear. In other words, his survival became more and more doubtful. The hero began to worry that he did not get more points in the previous chapter. Suddenly, Ronnie remembered that the 7th chapter was about Goldum City. There was a place where they sold potions that gave various abilities. The guy hoped that he would be able to make up for all the lost time if he spent well there. For this, he needed to accumulate 1,000,000 gold. Such a large amount and plan seemed hopeless to him. He did not understand how he could get so much gold. Ronnie forgot that he was in Manhwa. Then, unexpectedly, he noticed a sign of the bloody mafia, remembering Kiro's words before the end of the chapter that thanks to him, he finally took his revenge. And this meant that the bloody mafia, which dominated Virgin City and was Kiro's enemy, left the territory of the tower and left everything there unattended. Ronnie entered the building and, opening the door to the vault, was stunned by the amount of money that was there, completely ownerless and unsupervised. Just as the hero suspected, they had as much money as they should have with their fame. As soon as he was there, Leo almost beat him. Kiro pointed a gun at him. The author tries to remove him with every breath he takes. Ronnie had already begun to give up and thought that he would not succeed. Wiping his tears with a bill, he noted the author's talent for driving people into a dead end. Having collected a huge pile of money in a bag and decided that this would be enough until the 7th chapter, the hero headed for the exit, trying not to throw bills. As suddenly a tall man in a green tie appeared in front of him, Ronnie was surprised that he was able to enter there. The man assured that he would not do anything to him. He wondered if there was anything other than money in his bag, because there was one thing that would be a big problem in the wrong hands. Then he reached out with a request to check the bag just in case. Ronnie did not resist and complied, giving it to him. The man's name was Heck. He was known as the Chekhov gun that did not fire. In the story, he was able to catch Kiro and Leo when they did not expect to see him at all. Appearing at the very beginning of the story as a guy who hides something incredible, Heck was approved by the guys as a high-level scout, but the further the story progressed, the less often he appeared, and over time he became unnecessary, which made Ronnie feel very sorry for him. He thought that in a sense this character was just being used. Heck noticed that he looked at him with a very pitiful look. Ronnie tried to justify that he had such a face from nerves, but the man got angry, suspecting that the hero was condoling with him. Then Heck handed the guy the bag of money back, making sure that there was nothing else there besides them. Ronnie was about to go, but the man changed his mind. It seemed extremely strange to him that a stranger appeared there after the disappearance of the mafia without a trace. The hero decided to try to convince him that he was just a petty thief and that this was not a good enough reason to kill him. Using a special opportunity, he suggested that since Heck is a member of the Dark Shadow, he is not a simple crook, and his murder could be a blow to the reputation of the gang. Seeing that the man was still doubtful, Ronnie continued to persuade him to let him go because he looked like a simple bad guy who was everywhere. Heck laughed at his attempts to justify the theft as a matter of need. Then he took out his blade and ran his tongue over the knife. He had a genuine interest in the guy. The man heard that Ronnie knew that he was a member of the Dark Shadow, but Heck's identity had not yet been revealed, and the hero made a mistake in giving out this information. Having calmed down, the hero considered that he still had a chance to get out of this situation. He remembered that a man does not kill people without a good reason. But literally the next moment, a dagger flew right next to his ear and stuck into the wall, touching the skin, causing the hero to bleed from the wound. It was Heck's dagger. Then he took out the others, holding them between his fingers and offering to show them all to the hero, since they interested him so much. Ronnie realized that he had no chance in a fight with Heck. He would never stand against him. The man launched daggers in the direction of the hero. The Dark Shadow member mocked the petty thief's inability to defend himself. He couldn't let go of him because he had revealed his identity. The main character lay on the ground and suffered from pain. The opponent demanded to tell the whole truth about who he was and how he knew him. The hero had just received a reprieve and could not allow his character to die in this way. He wanted to escape from there as soon as possible. Heck decided to take pity on the guy who was still lying on the floor and give him one chance. He decided to offer him to guess his riddle. If Ronnie guesses, he will let him go, and if not, he will kill him. The hero became very nervous. But then he remembered that Heck always gives people riddles. Including him, there were 5 brothers and sisters. He's good at deceit, trickery, and causing discord between people, and he also likes to play hide and seek. He looked at the world with 3 questions. So who was he then? Heck believed that the guy would never guess, but Ronnie immediately gave his answer. The guy repeated that he was a species of goblins from mythology. The Dark Shadow member was about to say goodbye to him and kill him, but then he heard what Ronnie had replied to him. Realizing that the answer was correct, the hero immediately packed up and headed towards the exit. Since he was free, Heck yelled for the guy to wait a little longer, promising that he would still admit if he could answer what unique abilities he had and what 5 gods they had. Ronnie was able to immediately name the correct answer without hesitation, noting that such a pathetic question would not be an obstacle for a fan like him. And since he was able to guess his riddle, now he can leave with a clear conscience. He was already running to the exit when suddenly he wondered if he would really be released so easily. He's already met characters that the author has worked, and even mentioned the goblins that will appear in the last part of the story. And it was even beneficial for him, since Heck would soon appear in the chapter while Ronnie was following the sign to the big city. If he tied up all the loose ends, then he was sure that the author would like it, even if only a little. And the thread with the goblins is perfectly woven into the story. His chance of surviving again would also increase, as suddenly Ronnie fell to the ground unconscious, sweating profusely and bleeding from his wounds. Someone saw him lying down and decided to take him to the hospital. When the hero woke up, the doctor was trying to explain the meaning of his name. It meant paving the way to the light. The doctor and some stranger looked at him intently. They noticed that the guy was smiling. The hero considered himself the king of adventures and thought about it. As soon as he finally woke up and fully opened his eyes, the stranger noted that his life was in danger due to a lot of blood loss. Abruptly getting out of bed, he was warned that it was dangerous to jump up like that. But the guy thought that he had died and went to heaven, which surprised the people standing nearby. Putting the hero on a chair, the stranger noted that the guy was a hair's breadth from death, and he should be grateful to the one who left him on the threshold of the hospital. But Ronnie didn't remember anything. His last memory before he passed out was Heck's attack, suspecting that the last blow as he ran away was to blame. The doctor could not have imagined that this had happened to him, but asked to be more careful since in recent days the activity of mafia groups has increased. Fortunately, there were no other health problems. The doctor wondered if he had always had it so strong. Ronnie decided that this was his special trait. The hero was about to leave, thanking him for the last time and offering payment for treatment, but the doctor refused, explaining that he had done nothing, only laid him down. The guy forgot that the peculiarity of such a manga with a certain male target audience is the absence of paying bills for treatment in the hospital. Then he ran to the door in joy, managing to fall right at the threshold and drop his bag of money, surprising the stranger and the doctor. Ronnie went outside. He didn't expect that he was already in Seoul. If he was there, he wouldn't be a stubborn chin anymore, so he could only see the sky and the grass. Seeing the big city's welcome sign, Ronnie couldn't understand how he could be related to the current head. He had to hurry to Golden City. Suddenly, he heard how in the store with various elixirs and potions, it was the last day of discounts, and they invited customers to come in to pick up something for themselves. The hero thought that this was too small for the author's imagination, but he still really wanted to get inside, and he did not know how to get there. But he knew that this could be his only chance, and then he wouldn't have to go to Golden City. Ronnie went to the door. It seemed to him that there was more than just cosmetics. Going inside and looking around, he was surprised. As there were more potions than he expected, there were various flasks and jars around. One of the store employees turned to him. He wanted to know if the visitor was looking for something specific. The guy felt oppressive fear. Answering that he just came to see, the seller explained where the products were at a discount and where they were without and asked to call him if necessary. Ronnie realized that he was overreacting for no reason. There were a lot of potions around. According to his guesses, they were used by the first villains. Some potions had a terrible stench, others had destructive power, and there was also a potion that allowed you to turn wood into garbage. Taking out a jar of anti-aging cream, he suggested that it could be categorized as a special potion, but he needed potions for the next chapter. He wanted to change his plans when he found an extremely expensive, weight-reducing potion, as well as an even more expensive invisibility potion. Deciding to change the plan to the most villainous one, he bought these two potions in order to rob a bank in a big city. Sitting down on the bench, he began to read the information on the purchased potions. The first gave the ability to invisibility, but it did not apply to the others. The second had the ability to reduce the weight of the chosen thing. Ronnie thought that everything looked quite tolerable, but there were also disadvantages. The potion could kill him. The hero found it sad that lightweight gold could eventually turn into stones, so he decided to steal first and then think. He had one important reason why he was still in a calm state, and that was bank robbery. Ronnie bought a ticket to teleport anywhere in the chapter. He was about to start the process when suddenly a character approached him from behind. It was a man in a clown mask. He offered to start. Ronnie was very frightened. He saw a clown behind his shoulder at first, thinking that it was someone's child. The clown offered to help the hero and then divide everything in half. He saw everything, but the guy did not believe the words and suggested that he go play somewhere and not distract him. The character saw how the hero bought special potions. They are usually bought only by perverts or thieves. Ronnie did not expect to hear this. Assuming that the hero bought a weight-reducing potion in order to take the robbed out of the bank, the clown admitted that it was he who picked up the unconscious hero. The hero could not understand how this child brought him to the hospital, but he was more concerned about another issue. He had never seen this character in the comic. Coco remarked that robbing the bank alone was quite difficult, as they had doubled down on security due to a suspicious person who had bought an invisibility potion. The store had already informed all the nearby banks and jewelry stores. Ronnie decided to clarify how she was going to help him, but she wanted to negotiate first. Ronnie agreed to divide the loot equally and asked for an explanation of the plan. The clown was going to distract the guards and turn off the surveillance cameras inside the safe. She was also going to reduce the number of guards, and at the end she promised to share with him information that was difficult to obtain. It was the password to the safe. After these words, Ronnie guessed that the clown was also going to rob the bank, and this puzzled him greatly. The main character kept trying to understand who this child in the clown mask was, since he could not remember at least one character similar to him. The girl took out a vial with a potion to keep the promise and drank it. Ronnie asked for the password, but the clown asked him to promise something first. If the hero breaks their agreement to divide everything in half, then his large and charming chin can be torn in two. The guy began to doubt whether it was worth it, but she asked to reach out to make a pact on the potion. She grabbed it on her arm, and then asked if he agreed not to break the contract. Ronnie confirmed. They shook hands, and then the clown reminded what would happen if he broke his word. After that, she called the password, which consisted of prime numbers. The hero was surprised by such a combination, but Coco noted that it was difficult to find it. Ronnie believed that believability in a comic book should be the most important thing. Then the girl suggested that they start and meet at midnight for an exchange. She named the pub that was in the alley and made an appointment there and asked him to find the yellow demon when she got there. Coco created an explosion. The guards noticed her and ran after her. Ronnie was surprised by the abilities of the additional character. He was glad that there was still a wrong character like him in the story, then decided not to bother with it. The operation was in the first place. The guy drank an invisibility potion that tasted terrible. His character's design didn't change. It just disappeared for everyone. When he went inside, he saw that money was flying around, and employees were shouting about bills and documents, about backups and sending them to the branch. Proceeding to the vault, he saw that the door from him had been blown up. Ronnie was surprised that the girl really did this. There might be a guard downstairs, so he prepared to use his strength. Then walking to the door of the safe, he entered the password and was able to stuff the bags with bundles of money. The guards ran to the scene of the crime. They were surprised that someone was able to open the safe. Ronnie drank a second potion to relieve weight. The hero walked out of the bank. His chin had greatly increased in size. He assumed that this was a fine for interfering with the original story. Ronnie could not understand how it was possible to be so meticulous in terms of plot, but clumsy in such a way. At night, he went to meet Coco. The girl was surprised that he managed and was extremely displeased that he brought only 6 bags. He gave her half, as he promised. Then he asked her if she could carry them, but Coco took out a small bag and stated that she would put everything there. The hero considered it her unique ability. Quickly putting all the bags in a bag, which greatly surprised the hero, she suddenly changed her mind and decided to exchange her own bags for other bags. He couldn't understand why she had suddenly changed her mind, but the girl was already holding other bags in her hands. It seemed to her that they looked bigger. Coco explained that she just decided so, praising him for his good work. She promised that the curse would be lifted since the contract was fulfilled. He really wanted to insult her for this behavior, but in the end, he praised her for doing a good job. Ronnie could not understand where she got her unique ability from. If she was an unimportant character, taking the bags, he hurried to get the head to Golden City. Picking up the bags, the guy felt something was wrong, and opening them, saw that instead of money there were stones. He realized that the girl had stolen his part of the loot. Her bag was larger inside than the outside. The hero assumed that she had changed them inside her bag, although he could not realize how this was possible. The hero noticed that she was behaving strangely, so it is not surprising that she decided to deceive him. At this time, he blushed all over with anger. His hands were clenched in fists. He promised himself that he would catch up with her sooner or later. She would not be able to run far. She had contacted the wrong guy. As he expected, he was treated as befits a manhwa, and he decided to contact the guild, a group that provides information for money. Delighted that he was studying the environment in which the story takes place, he knocked on the door and was asked what he wanted to know. Ronnie spoke a yellow demon. It was second-level information about that girl, and the cost was high because of her rank, but he was willing to fork out. Guild information usually starts at level 5, so this meant that Coco's second level was indicative of her abilities. It was still the beginning of the story, so the hero doubted whether it was normal that such unusual characters appeared. Taking out the money left after Virgin City, he gave exactly half of it to the guild. The girl was about 17 years old. She appeared there about a year ago. Coco worked with others, was convicted of working with members of some organization, but no information was provided from them. She most often appears in the area of banks, jewelry stores, and specialty potion stores, and often walks around in a mask next to them. He believed that this manhwa was too plausible and that she would be tried for this, especially considering that the child was very verbose. Then he decided to inquire about her bag. He considered this ability too unique, but the elder said that this information was more expensive. Angry that more money was being extracted from him, he asked to at least find out her location, but there was very little information about her. Then the man promised to give some more information about the girl, from which to draw conclusions, so Ronnie was forced to pay the same amount. There were 3 places where this organization is located, to which the yellow demon belongs, and this morning it was seen in one of them. He had to pay more for the exact location. The hero gave all his money, which made him very upset, because he had not yet received anything useful. After receiving information about the whereabouts, he went to an abandoned small house. Before entering, Ronnie decided to take a potion that increases strength. Still angry at the man who scammed him for money for the information he needed, the hero believed that it was not worth it. He could not go back because everyone around would be looking for him, and there would also be notices about his search. Therefore, the hero decided to return his money back by any means. The potion gave additional power for a limited amount of time. His body greatly increased in size. On the approach to the house, he was met by security who tried to stop him and informed him of the closure of the establishment. Ronnie was not going to stand on ceremony with them. He simply attacked them and threw them aside with one blow. The rest of the group was frightened by the unexpected guest. He really wanted his money back, so he knocked out everyone in his path and broke through the wall of bodies. The hero was furious and couldn't understand how these extra empty characters could stop him. Fearing that he would waste the potion's time, he decided to try drinking the invisibility potion again to make sure he could get his money. Once inside, he found a staircase to the basement, which caused a strange, oppressive feeling. Ronnie wondered why the author used horror elements. He tried to be completely silent so as not to be accidentally caught, but when he went downstairs, he found a huge number of rooms in the hallway. Realizing that with such success, the potion would wear off before he could detect Coco. But suddenly he heard a familiar voice and went at it. The girl shouted at the man with a strange face that she had already paid off all her debt, but he did not agree and asked her if she knew his size. The hero looked through the half-open door. He saw her when she was making excuses that she had paid all 35 million gold coins to the last coin, but the man was not going to let her go. The girl shouted about her freedom, but the man reminded her of her duty to the principal. She had never heard of such a thing, and he told her that it was written in the contract and that the contract should have been read more carefully. Ronnie did not understand what kind of cliched story was going on there, and the man suddenly wondered if she had brought a friend with her, as she thought that he would treat her unfairly. Moreover, he was aware of the fact that her friend was in an invisible state and thought that they had gone too far with the precaution and then ordered him to leave. The hero was very surprised that he was caught and could be seen. Coco did not understand at all what it was about and what invisibility her interlocutor was talking about. Army was very angry. He believed that she had brought the guy with her and promised to get rid of him first, and then from her at the same time. Ronnie had a bad feeling. He hid behind the door, terrified that the man knew he was there, and then he felt a hand on his shoulder. The guy did not expect to see him behind his back, and Army forbade him to run away, then informing him that eavesdropping was a crime. The main character could not understand why this villain was there. He appeared in the last episode at the Tower of Middle-earth. The factions were teaming up to fight the other to get the title of King of Adventure. Army wanted it, but Leo and Kiro were going to fight against. The main character of the comic could not recognize the strength of the enemy. It was completely incomprehensible to him, and his friend warned him about caution. Ronnie realized that the villain's power was too huge and enough to destroy an entire city. Army reported that the hero was too noisy, so he was discovered. He desperately wanted to punish the guy for trespassing into someone else's territory. Grabbing Ronnie's chin, Coco was surprised to finally see him. She wanted to know what he was doing there. The guy admitted that he had come for her. The effects of the potion were already running out, and he was rubbing his chin in pain. His whole body was shaking slightly. He was sure that it was because he felt the power of the villain. He had seen this in the manhwa before, calling it the difference in rank. Army mocked the hero's huge protruding chin. The man then asked if the girl knew Ronnie, but she said that it was the first time she had seen him, and he was just a bank robber, a pathetic, stubborn chin. With these words, she got on the hero's nerves. He wanted to talk to the girl, but Army was going to kill him. Ronnie tried to explain that he had lost all his money because of her, and now he might lose his life. Army said that she was the treasure of their organization. The girl offered the hero to attack her. She was ready to smash his chin to pieces. The guy did not understand why everyone was attached to his chin. She inquired about his reason for going there, but all he wanted to know from her was how she managed to steal his money. He wondered if she had used her leather bag for this, and if there was money there, but the girl felt that it was inappropriate to talk about such a thing at the moment. The hero did not care about the situation. He ordered her to answer the question. Army twisted the dagger in his hands and hinted that he would not be able to take the money. He would die anyway. Army wanted to move on to the next question. The guys looked at how he licked his dagger, and Ronnie offered to save the girl if he returned the money. It seemed to her that the guy had no chance with such strength as he had. The villain was curious about what they were talking about, and the guy was rushing the girl with a decision. Ronnie held out his hand to her and asked if she understood everything, offered to take her if she still wanted to live, but the girl still doubted his capabilities. The villain with the red handkerchief was already getting angry because of their collusion. He offered to bury them alive if they wanted to. He was ready to honor them with such an honor. He couldn't let them die peacefully but offered to beg for their lives. Coco got scared and confirmed that she believed him, grabbed his hand. The hero activated his teleportation ticket. They moved to Golden City, to a bench. Ronnie asked if the curse was an invention of the girl. She confirmed. She didn't know the name of the organization she had just been in, nor the name of the main boss. All she knew was the guy who wanted to kill them. The rescue of the girl led to unpredictable consequences. The hero could not wait for the beginning of a new chapter, hoping that then he would be happy. And also hoping that the story would follow the adventures of Leo. The hero could not believe that he was trying to get into a chapter that he did not want to get into in the first place. The guy thought about it, and Coco asked him to share his thoughts with her. He wanted to think of how he could use her in the future. Coco still wanted to repay him for saving her life and decided to ask what he planned to do. The chapter continued in the meantime. And also the assessment of his character was supposed to happen in this chapter. In the meantime, it was time to meet the already forgotten main characters. Leo and Kiro arrived in Golden City. The main character could not believe that everything around him was shining so brightly. Big cities were always different. The blonde man was very hungry, so he offered to stop and have a snack. He regretted that they got lost because they did not prepare for the journey. Ronnie was watching the hero and his friend from around the corner. Leo just saw a gourmet restaurant. The hero believed that they would be let in there without any problems. As soon as they went inside, they were immediately kicked out of there, mistaking them for vagrants. The cook was not going to serve them for free because they had no money at all. The cook was already tired of receiving travelers all the time. They brought continuous problems. Leo was upset that he had lost all his money. The hero watched what was happening with great joy that he saw such a rare event as Leo's tears. Coco noticed his reaction as if he was in a romantic manhwa. Kiro was philosophical, since this is an adventure. Things should not be so easy and was sure that they could find another way out. One of the minor characters called out to the guys as he wanted to help, but Ronnie put his hand on his shoulder and asked him to slow down. Ronnie had a plan. He wanted to play this role and threatened the character to leave quickly while he was in a good mood. Coco found it cute. The character ran away, and the girl noticed that the hero was planning something in his head, since only bad guys usually deal with threats. His original character was just a third-rate bad guy. Now the hero was an unshakable fan of the King of Adventure. The main character approached Kiro and Leo. They noticed him. The guy noticed that they got stuck in a bunch of problems, like real travelers. After asking if they were looking for a place to eat, since he saw them kicked out of the restaurant, Leo was surprised that the guy was watching them all this time. Kiro tensed, not understanding what the stranger was leading to. Ronnie got ahead of him and suggested that they go to the soup kitchen. There are all kinds of delicacies. The blonde was happy with the unexpected help. The hero sent them to the city's casino. It was quite a famous place, so they could safely go there. Leo was very grateful for the help of the stubborn Chin, believing that he had saved them, and they immediately headed to the recommended place. The main antagonist did not fully trust the guy, but agreed to go to the casino. Ronnie, meanwhile, was glad that he was able to help, and Coco was frightened by his face. Ronnie already knew what was going to happen next in the story. He said that they had passed all the prerequisites. He wanted to get them to enter that casino. Coco didn't understand what he was talking about. The girl remembered that he advised them a free place to eat, but the hero expected that they would remain in great debt to him. Coco began to doubt that she was on the right side, and the guy was glad that he was finally able to talk to Leo. The guys also dressed up for that. To get into the casino, Ronnie did not worry that they would look suspicious, and the girl hoped to play. But before the hero reveals all his plans to the girl, he asked her to show what potions she still had left, and then she opened her bag. She had a clairvoyance potion to see through something, a trap potion to set a trap, and also a potion to detect lies. In addition, she also had a rejuvenating cream, a potion of good luck, as well as a whisper potion that allows you to transmit coded words. He took out a jar of hyaluronic acid cream and was afraid to guess how much money she had spent on all this. The girl admitted that she spent almost all of his money on them, but she had no other choice. Ronnie got very angry and stated that she had no conscience. The hero suggested that she walked over many heads, but she said that she did not go over one because she was not a person like him. Deciding to start with a potion that allows him to recognize lies, he took it out of her bag. The girl was upset that she had spent a lot of gold to be an errand boy. She had spent a huge amount of money on her entire collection of potions, and with the cost of a leather bag, it came out even more. Ronnie began to doubt that they would pull off a trip to the casino, but the sixth chapter of becoming a jack of all trades in the casino had already been written. In this chapter, two guys who had no money but were hungry, so they agreed to work in the casino kitchen for food. But the importance of this chapter was that they would meet the Queen of Goldem City named Sienna. The hero already knew that she would have to become the third partner of the main character in the comic. She looked spectacular, in a short dress and a hat with a wide brim. The guys finally headed to the entrance of the casino. Ronnie asked the girl to be more careful, as they needed to earn a name for themselves. He was ready to lose all their remaining money for the sake of the goal. He was given time until the moment when Leo made a mistake while working in the casino. At the moment, Kiro and Leo will be overeating, so for now, he has had enough time to become a very important person in this casino. The hero planned to take Leo's side when he competed with the queen. Coco was supposed to help him with this. Ronnie believed that this would be his only chance to outlive the head in their outfits. They finally entered the building. Coco managed to spend 20 million gold in 5 minutes after entering the casino. She began to beg the hero to give her more money and promised to win this time. She demanded another chance from the guy. In order to earn a living, she was preparing for a game on slot machines and asked him not to be greedy. The guy realized that the girl was completely incapable of gambling. He called her skills poor, but she still hoped to get more money from him. The girl in unique abilities had only a bag that could fit absolutely everything. She was a forgotten character. Suddenly, a notification appeared. She added a characteristic of clumsiness. It was not worth waiting for luck from her character. Coco could not understand what was being said. The main character decided to change his strategy. Now he was going to play, and he appointed her as his assistant, which angered her. She demanded more money. Then he promised to let her play roulette if she was interested. She immediately changed her anger to mercy, saying that from the very beginning, she wanted to become an assistant. Coco asked about their plan of action. Ronnie first wanted to meet the queen of the city's casino. She had already heard about the queen and asked if he was talking about the famous casino owner. The hero confirmed her guesses and pointed to the sign. On the wall hung the names of all those who were on the list of very important persons of the gambling establishment. If he wanted to face Xian, then he also had to get on this list. For this, he had to beat one of the strongest players. Finally, the style of drawing changed. The security guard turned to Leo and Kiro, explaining that the buffet was only for visitors. The guys did not expect such a turn. They had no money at all. The blonde was very upset. The employee offered to work off everything they ate and appointed them as handymen. Ronnie himself invited them to come here, but he was still angry at the author for such a story. The heroes of the comic were forcibly taken to the back room. He walked out of the casino building. There were only 2 episodes left until the end of the chapter, which meant that the time had come. He had to get into the list of the best. It should have been done before Leo left the kitchen. Ronnie had found the perfect opponent for their plan. Coco was eager to find out who this adult man was. Reno was an important person, no 3. His ability to discern through the character's cards, as well as mix other people's cards. Coco was surprised that the man was only 3rd on the list of the best. She considered her abilities much higher than his. It seemed to her that Reno still had many years to study for him to achieve the same mastery as hers. But Ronnie did not understand why she thought she was better. The hero was well aware that the man was going to use his unique abilities. He wanted to look into the opponent's cuts and mix them. The Yellow Demon, having learned about the man's talents, thought that they were at a disadvantage, but the hero was also going to cheat by playing with him. He hinted that he wanted to use the special potions that the girl had collected in her bag. He thought that it was not forbidden to use the opportunities. Ronnie hoped to win the jackpot without attracting unnecessary attention, and then leave to embark on his own journey. After asking Coco if she would be willing to crush this arrogant man, she agreed, and they sent a message to Rhino. In the message, the hero sent an invitation to play 1 match together. Then Reno was curious if the guy knew him, but then pretended not to have heard of him. The man with the mustache thought the guy was funny and wanted to see what he was like, offering to play Texas Hold'em 1-on-1. It was a type of poker when each participant receives 2 cards. The community cards will also be laid out. Then you need to make a combination of your own and community cards. The one who had the biggest combination and was the winner, the hero calculated the exact chance of his victory, and it was negligible. The host of the game offered to start if the guests were ready. Ronnie hoped to attract the attention of the author of the work in this way. He knew that when Leo fought the queen, then Reno would still be there, so the hero planned to take his place in any way he could. He had already read about it when he was going to test his funds in a few rounds, but in reality, everything could be very different. Ronnie immediately got quite high cards, but with each new pair he became more and more nervous. Reno laughed at the guy's confusion. The hero realized that in this way the man showed his ability to change cards. He was worried more and more, since he did not have time to recoup. The guy felt desperate, so he decided to make a full bet since it came to this, but if he lost, then he was in danger of being removed from the table. Calling his assistant in the person of Coco, he asked her to bring him a glass of orange and grapefruit juice. She accepted his order. She immediately brought him his order, so they added a potion to deceive everyone in one glass and a potion of luck in the second. Reno mocked the guy, surprised that he had a tickle in his throat, once ordered 2 drinks at once. Then the hero summed up and offered to play like an adult. The man did not expect this, and the hero decided to bring him to justice, taking his word that if he was a worthy opponent, he would make a full bet and play 1 round. The participant from the golden list got angry, and when asked by the guy why he blushed all over, admitted that he was very annoying to him. Ronnie tried to provoke his opponent, noting that although he was an important person, he lacked courage. Coco was afraid that he was going overboard with words. The hero decided to bet everything on this round. He considered this behavior suitable for the city of gambling and offered the man to throw off if he was afraid. This is the only guy in his life that was supposed to determine his fate. At first, the opponent thought a little, but after a moment, he laughed a lot. He laughed at the fact that it seemed to him that his opponent was straining his whole brain to try to beat him in the game. Reno was interested in the hero's proposal, and then decided to offer the loser the opportunity to swim, which shocked the guy. Because he offered to swim naked in a sea of electric jellyfish in a large city, they were often used for torture. The hero asked him to stop as he did not know anything that had not been mentioned earlier in the history of the work. Even the author did not know about this type of torture. The croupier tried to interrupt the verbal battles of the rivals. Reno continued to humiliate the hero, believing that those who did not know about jellyfish should be kicked out. And even more so the stubborn chin that chatters about all sorts of nonsense, but the guy had another plan, and he asked for objections to predict something. The very important person tensed up for a moment, but Ronnie guessed out loud that the man would lose this round. The opponent's hand, which had always been as clear as the sky, was now completely unreadable, and no matter what Rhino did, the hero's cards would not change. Then the man would think that he had reached a dead end and would not be able to do anything else with his unique ability. He did not understand what these words meant. Ronnie continued to put pressure on the opponent. He could not challenge him without some kind of plan. He believed that it was time for him to leave this post from the list. Then the guy picked up the cards and with a grin asked the man to see exactly what cards he had in his hands. He had a good reason why he chose Reno out of all the people on the golden list. He desperately wanted to attract the attention of the author of the manhwa. Despite his ability to see through the character's cards, as well as his ability to mix other people's cards, Rhino's abilities were weakened by high seas. The man seemed to the hero to be the easiest opponent. He knew in advance about the peculiarity of his ability. He only needed to break his spirit. Reno was sure that the hero was bluffing himself, and he could not see because of his problematic hands. Ronnie hinted that the man was waiting for a swim with electric jellyfish. Executioners like to use words like that, Ronnie added, while his opponent's excitement only intensified, and he tried to calm himself. The opponent did not care what cards the hero currently had. He needed to change them to a smaller combination. Then the hero decided to lay out the cards on the table, and with his layout shocked the opponent. He did not understand how the hero could bluff with only one pair. At the same time, he didn't care. He was sure of his victory, and also that it wouldn't be fun at all to end up like this. He activated his ability. Lightning flashed from the man's eyes, which enveloped all the cards on the table. Ronnie did not understand what was happening. Coco also tensed up a lot, not knowing what to expect. The man noticed that there was no place for strangers during the game. Then he offered to start opening the cards. The croupier asked them to show the cards. The girl saw Bob and 2 pairs. Reno could not believe her words because his combination was definitely different. But the winner was the stubborn chin. The hero was able to collect a winning combination under the nose of the opponent. This information infuriated a very important person from the list. He could not understand how it happened that it was just one couple. Immediately afterward, he pointed at the hero and accused him of cheating. Ronnie was afraid that he had been caught. But he was able to provoke Rhino. He had only 3 cards in his hands, but it was luck that helped him outwit his opponent. Out of 6 hearts, he made a 9 with the trap potion. The man was angry as he was confident in his victory. But his cards from Full House became 1 pair. He grabbed a glass and threw it at the hero and touched him on the cheek. This act greatly frightened Coco. The casino had certain rules that prohibited violence, so security grabbed the man and held him while he continued to scream. After drinking 2 potions along with the juice, the hero came to the conclusion that it was the potion of luck that worked. It was able to successfully provoke the player. Ronnie grinned at such disgusting behavior of a very important person, and then he decided to remind the man about swimming naked among electric jellyfish. The man was very frightened and immediately threw himself on his knees and began to beg for mercy, also noting that he had nothing but money. There was no need to persuade the guy for a long time, but instead he suggested that the man run 20 laps around him and at the same time loudly call himself bald. Meanwhile, the queen was sitting on her throne. She was told the news that a new important person had just appeared. The girl was curious what kind of star had fallen this time. She was glad to hear that it was Rhino. He was already tired of everyone around with his jellyfish in the sea. She was then told that the winner had made a strange proposal and asked the loser to run around him and hum strange words. Sienna asked to bring the young man to her. She herself wanted to get to know him personally and find out what he was like. The guys were escorted to the queen. She admitted that she had heard about Ronnie and was glad to meet them. She heard that he had won a large sum of money and defeated an important person. So she decided to offer him, who had knocked down the shining star from the top and taken its place, to become the new, most important person in their casino. Coco didn't expect to hear such an offer from her, but Sienna said that there were mandatory rules that he had to follow. For example, if she tells him to be present at the game, then he will have to unquestioningly fulfill her wish. Suddenly, she was informed that there was an emergency situation in the kitchen, a commotion. The formation of handymen in the casino was coming to an end. She wanted to execute them all. The fateful hour for the hero came. The author made the final assessment of his character. His assessment was improved, and he was finally able to attract the author's attention. The author's affection increased by 1 point. The main character was very surprised that he was able to do this. The chance of his reappearance increased by 100%. The hero couldn't believe that the odds had increased so much, and the level of recognition had also increased, and he was glad that his plan in the casino had worked out as he had planned. But 100% was really a lot. The guy could not expect such a result, and was delighted. Coco did not quite understand his bright reaction. The character Stubborn Chin will definitely appear in the next chapter. Besides, he began to receive points, at first due to the increase in popularity with the author. He also received points for increasing the chances of reappearing in the story, and points were also given for achieving a high chance of reappearing. Ronnie realized that since he had gotten so many points at once, he should have focused on the author rather than the readers. The queen approached the hero again. She asked if he had filled out the rule for VIPs that he had to join the game if she asked. Since there was a small commotion in the kitchen, the girl hoped that the hero would be able to do her a small favor. She assumed that he agreed, and the guy confirmed her guesses without hesitation. He was ready to start immediately if there was such a need. The drawing changed to black and white again, an announcement for all guests of the casino. It was decided to punish the guy who caused a commotion in the kitchen, but the queen decided to give him another chance to correct his mistakes. 2 guards grabbed Leo and put him at the gaming table. The blonde was given a second chance. Ronnie couldn't believe it, but it was such a feature of the city's casino called Death Race. This time, the death race was held according to the rules. People crowded around the table and rejoiced at such an interesting event. The game consisted of 7 games. At the end, they added up the entire score. But if the guy lost, he would not be able to take a step outside the casino until he paid the entire amount. The observers did not particularly support the blonde. Ronnie believed that they, on the contrary, would root for the victim of the race. But they wished him to lose and die. As soon as the main character managed to feel sorry for Leo, he suddenly shouted joyfully and agreed to this challenge, considering it insignificant. The other characters didn't expect him to be happy to accept the offer and ready to start right away, but he wouldn't be the protagonist if he gave up easily. Ronnie believed that the guy's level of bluffing was growing. They decided not to postpone the game and start immediately. The 7th chapter of the story of the King of Adventures continued. The first opponent was the 6th important person, Josh. Many in the building supported him and wished him victory. According to the author's wishes, the Stubborn Chin will be the main character of the chapter. The area for intervention has increased. The chances of getting readers' attention were increased. Such was the price of attention and the author. Ronnie believed that in this case there would be no problems with this chapter. Double Josh was very overconfident. He couldn't comprehend how dare Leo challenge him, but the hero was confident of his victory. The opponent's unique ability was the ability to choose the best cards. From the 2, He could choose the best one, as well as reuse the card after choosing. The important person was sure that no one would beat him in terms of chances. He always had an advantage in choosing cards, because this was his unique ability. He was going to take this opportunity to destroy Leo. He was curious about what the handyman had to do to throw a challenge. One of them had a straight flush, and the other had a royal flush. The croupier recognized Leo's victory, which made Josh scream. The blonde was happy and surprised by his victory. Ronnie didn't understand how he could assemble a piano the first time. He hadn't heard of such an ability of a guy, but in the end he won all the games with this combination. The rest of the rivals could not believe that every time the guy got the same thing, he did not show anything except the piano. Ronnie wondered what was happening to the story. Suddenly everyone around him became fans of the guy, and the hero read such an absurdity with such vivid emotions. Suddenly a sense of shame washed over him, followed by a stage of 1 against 5, and the rule of 7 card studs was added. Leo had to go against everyone. The 5 of them will have one combination, and the player needed to beat them all. The blonde was surprised that everything had become so complicated. Suddenly Kiro came. He said that he had prepared cool drinks. It was time to think about a strategy. Kiro also brought snacks in addition to drinks, and offered them to all the players at the table. As it was supposed to be according to the plot, Ronnie already knew about it. Everyone at the table immediately pounced on the treats. Leo was glad to see him, which made Ronnie afraid that everyone would understand their plan. But the guests were more engrossed in the appetizers than in the possible danger. So Ronnie was forced to ask himself where Kiro had brought these treats from. After all, they were both participants in the commotion, which meant that these products were incompatible with the game. The food was worth serving after a huge victory. Coco was still standing behind the hero, and Ronnie called her to him. He thought that this was the very moment when he could intervene in the story. The hero suggested that they have a drink after the game, and in the meantime enjoy what they already had with them, so he asked for a glass of whispering potion from his assistant. Kiro was chased back to the kitchen. Leo was very worried about his friend's departure when suddenly he heard a stubborn chin whispering to him. Ronnie tried to explain that he already knew the two of them, even though Leo might not remember him, and then said that he was there to help him. Leo couldn't hold back and screamed loudly. The hero didn't expect such a reaction and quickly asked him to shut up. Otherwise, they would be caught because of him. He didn't ask him to believe him unquestioningly, although he couldn't. Leo's strange behavior raised questions for everyone. All he had to do was make a bet. But he had to do it without a doubt when he had good cards in his hands. So Ronnie would help the blonde win. After asking Coco for grapefruit juice, she threatened him, hoping that he understood that if Leo won, they would be working at the casino for a long time. Coco was grateful for saving him, but did not want to be chained to a place again, so she insistently asked him to destroy the blonde. Otherwise, she was ready to destroy him. The hero drank a drink with a potion, and then he mentally apologized to her because the main characters of the manhwa were not them. 6 players were seated at the table. Leo raised the bet and put all his chips on the table and stated that he bet everything. The others were surprised that he was doing this. It was bold and stupid, in their opinion. Some believed that he wanted to stay in the casino forever with such actions. According to the plot, Leo's hand was close to the piano, so in order for him to win, Ronnie had to make sure that all the important people went all in. After consulting, the players came to the conclusion that it was dangerous to bet due to the fact that he previously had only pianos and planned to pass. Ronnie said that he knew that he would not be able to assemble the piano and showed that he had an ace, but he changed the suit with the help of a potion of deception. Deciding that then they would have no problems, they decided that they could beat the blonde with either hand, as long as it was not a piano. They already wanted to end the game quickly, so one by one they raised their bets until they had placed all their chips. The hero was also the last to raise his stakes, then whispered to the main character that he had done everything he could, but only the author knew whether he would have a piano or not. The croupier began to reveal the cards. Ronnie was very worried and begged the author to show all the greatness of the main character. He had the last opportunity to bet, but he decided to go all in despite the fact that his life was at stake. Loudspeakers were broadcasting that history was being made before their eyes. Finally, there was a worthy challenger in the city who was able to get a battle from the queen herself. Everyone was wondering if he could defeat her. Everyone took their places to watch the main battle. The hero and Coco stood at the fence. The girl was unhappy that he had lost after all. Ronnie tried to explain that the guy only got pianos, but Coco also remembered the fact that he was the one who brought Leo to the casino since he was in debt. She wondered if he would owe the casino for the food he ate, and she also thought that he would lose, so she was calm. Sienna went down to the game. The girl was the owner of a casino. Her ability was an assistant who hates fair play. adjusting the desired odds only for her. Coco thought that her and Ronnie's debts would end up on Leo too, so they could safely leave there as she was already sick of this casino. The battle was over. The winner, as always, was the queen. As a reward, she could announce her demands in person. The 7th chapter was a turning point in the King of Adventures, showing unique abilities that are not related to battle for the first time. In this chapter, she and Leo were able to find their real comrades. Sienna asked to take her on their adventure, just as Coco reminded them of their same plans. Ronnie had forgotten that he had promised to go on his journey with her. The girl was ready to move out. She did not like the noisy casino, but he had one more thing to do. He decided to offer her to see how it all ended, because they had not yet heard the hero's answer to the queen's request. Leo was surprised that the queen wanted to travel with them. He asked her to name the reason for such a desire. Sienna felt like a prisoner in the casino. She was the first and last person to win the death race. Initially, the casino belonged to El Viego. He was the head of the mafia of Goldam City. She only bought this institution because she was too lazy to set everything up herself. But there was one problem. El Viego was killed, but his subordinates stayed in the casino and controlled her every move and tried to kick her out. The only condition for her freedom was to lose the death race. But no one was able to overtake her, not even the very important people on the list. Leo managed to do it, so she tearfully asked him to get her out of this cage and give her the opportunity to fly around the world, and he happily agreed. Ronnie watched how happy Leo and Sienna were. He didn't understand how they could be so happy when the story had just begun. Their happiness would end from now on. Hard times were coming. El Viego from the Queen's story was the head of the Dark Shadow Mafia Alliance, the very place with Chekhov's gun heck where the hero had previously been when he tried to steal money from the disappeared mafia. Everything became more blurred. Leo was looking for his savior, glad that he had finally found Ronnie. Then he ran to him. The drawing changed abruptly again, puzzled the hero. The blonde shook hands with the hero, thanking him for his help. He was curious why the stranger decided to help him. At first, Ronnie tried to find the words to answer, but all he could do was mumble a few words. He finally got a full scene in the chapter. He really wanted to make an impact and was thinking about what to say to him, so he pretended that it was a secret that he could not yet reveal, promising that one day, when they met again, he would confess everything to him. Leo admitted that he would never forget his help anyway. Finally, Kiro joined the joyful Leo and Sienna and set off, Ronnie watching them from afar using Hex technique. The queen smiled happily. The girl thanked all the residents and also admitted that she was retiring to become an ordinary Sienna. The 7th chapter of the death race ended with the scene of the queen's farewell to the casino. Next to her stood a smiling Kiro and Leo, anticipating adventure. There was a traditional assessment of the character. His name was changed to a mysterious stubborn chin and was also added to the special abilities. There was a response from many readers, and it also attracted the attention of the author, raising the author's favorability, thereby increasing the chance of reappearance. His performance has grown a lot since the first chapter. The hero was completely delighted and very surprised by the author's bonus in the form of a gift. The gift was the inclusion of the mysterious stubborn chin in the list of official characters of the King of Adventure. The character was assigned a class. From this moment, he could master unique abilities, and the story of the past was added from the author. Ronnie had a tear of joy in his eyes as he was now an official character and not just a background character. He was able to get these regalia only on chapter 16 when the manhwa had just begun, because the prologue had just ended. He burst into tears with joy and wiped the tears from his eyes with Coco's hair, which was tied in a ponytail. The author deduced the final assessment of the character. He began to enter the preliminary cast of the next chapter and receive points due to the growth of recognition. The guy thought this was great news, and he also received points for the increase in the author's favorability and due to the increased chance of reappearing. The hero checked his account once again and was very inspired by the fact that with such a score, he would soon be able to buy a copycat acrobat. Finally, Ronnie also received a gift from the author, a story of the past. He could choose only one of the three, about a member of the organization of killers. Either about the deposed commander or about the owner of the 7th ring. They were all the main villains of the next chapter, and it was necessary to decide. After the casino, the guys decided to stop by Rosemary's Diner. Ronnie felt annoyed, but he didn't understand the reason either. He was confused. Among all the stories of the past given by the authors, the third one about the owner of the 7th ring seemed to him the most winning. Those mafiosi who had appeared as enemies until now were incomparable to him. His ring allowed him to command them all. In other words, he is the top of all the mafias. The hero was sure that a villain would appear, and it seemed logical to him to choose his story, while Coco talked about her food. The hero really wanted to choose this particular story. He remembered how he had read earlier about how the owner of the seventh ring won all the battles in a row. Since he is the main character, he will have to act according to the author's plans. This time it will be difficult for him to intervene and leave the chapter. Ronnie was at the mercy of the writer. He moved him like a puppet. It seemed to the hero that the author was treating him so obviously as to tie him hand and foot. Unexpectedly, a character should appear. He looked at Coco, who continued to eat with appetite, decided to ask who she was at all. He couldn't understand why a character with such unique abilities and strength as her was so infamous in the big city. The girl did not have an answer to this question. She herself did not know why, but she decided to pretend it was too long and difficult to explain. While the hero was thinking about whose story to choose, he realized that he should not think of it as a change in the past, but rather as a reboot of it. Finally, the guys left the diner. Coco was immediately curious where they were going now. Then Ronnie said that he had one place. Suddenly, the hero was pushed by a man who immediately confronted the hero for this. After his statement that it was the fault of a stranger, he grabbed Ronnie by the collar of his shirt. Then he noticed the National Zookeeper's badge on the hero's jacket and assumed that he had also come to see the canyon. The stranger thought that the hero might know his friend Morgan, but this name was unfamiliar to him. He later admitted that his slightly confusing past. Out of nowhere, the man placed a bag of coins in Ronnie's hand and, apologizing for his rudeness, asked her to spend them all on his trip. After that, he went on, asking to say hello to his friend. The guys were shocked. Coco asked if they knew each other, but the main character had not met him before. The girl was surprised that he had been doing such things before. It seemed to her that he had something to tell about, but Ronnie believed that this was a witch's curse. He assumed that it was an effect of the past. Coco laughed that he was able to make witches somewhere and hoped that he didn't pay money to be cursed. But Ronnie smiled embarrassedly because that was exactly what he had done. His face had become ugly because of the witch who was jealous of his appearance. Now he wanted to find her. But once every 2 weeks he could turn into a handsome young man for 1 hour. While he did not consider himself ugly, on the contrary, very pretty. Suddenly he realized reality, and it weighed on him, closing the topic. The hero invited his girlfriend to go further. She was curious where exactly they were going. The guy said out loud that the introductory part of the story was finally over, and now the big episode was beginning, but Coco did not understand what he was talking about at all. Suddenly, he reminded her how once they had already done teleportation and wanted to repeat it, her friend doubted, because it was very expensive. Heck was watching them from around the corner. He was chasing the heroes meanwhile. Coco grinned at her friend's wealth and asked to give her some as well. Then they joined hands and Ronnie shouted at their departure location, the Death Tomb Mafia City. Heck heard and knew he was on the right track. 6 people were sitting at the table under the bright light of the lamp. Heck told them where the hero and his girlfriend were going. Another man said that the second one had lost his boss. And the first one was completely destroyed. Heck noticed that the queen was not the real boss. It was El Viego, who was on the side of the alliance. It seemed to him that the yellow-haired boys Leo and Kiro were more important now, who, in his opinion, were now wreaking havoc in mafia circles with their campaigns. The 2 of them destroyed the Virgin City Mafia and took the Queen of Goldum City. Their superiors gave the order to follow them, so they decided to do it. But Heck wasn't just thinking about these 2. He was also thinking about the stubborn Chin, remembering that he knew about the existence of his goblin essence. Few people knew such things about him. Chekhov's guns believed that Ronnie was definitely chasing a guy named Kiro. Meanwhile, Ronnie and Coco were walking through the streets of the city. They smelled fish. The hero really wanted to take a shower, although it was not from them. Heck was watching them and was there too. He was anticipating that something very interesting was coming. He was waiting to meet the hero in the Mafia Tomb of Death City. All the heroes of the comic, led by Leo, also arrived at the Tomb of Death. Kiro was happy as he ran out of smoke, and Leo liked the name of the city. Queen Sienna was also glad that they had finally reached the place. She had heard that El Viego had been there, and she wanted to see this thief at least once. The girl had already been there a couple of times as the boss of the Golden Mafia, so she volunteered to give a tour of the Tomb of Death to her escort. Some shadows were targeting Leo and his partners. They were one step away from danger. The guys were thinking about what to do first. Ronnie noticed the shadows that were openly watching the heroes of the manhwa and was surprised that no one had noticed them yet. Coco recognized the guys. She was interested in why they came to the city under the leadership of the mafia. and the hero was upset that the author did not finalize the staging of the shots. The hero agreed with her. The Tomb of Death was a place of a large concentration of the mafia, which meant that there were many people there targeting Leo and his comrades. But at the same time, he understood that this was not an obstacle for the heroes. Just as for them, he wanted to know where the travelers from the West had gone now. The girl knew that there was only one place they could go, and that was the central branch of the Western Travelers Association. The Advent is the place where the central branch is located. It could only be reached through the Tomb of Death. On the way there, they were supposed to meet a copy acrobat. Ronnie knew that if he couldn't earn enough points, then there would be no acrobat. Coco thought for a moment, and then assumed that they should join them because, judging by their actions, they were villains. Ronnie tensed a little, as the girl was right. In the end, he agreed to do so. He didn't care as long as he didn't get bored. Coco was happy. She suggested thinking of it as a plus. They wouldn't look like a fish without water. Then she remarked that thinking with his head was his job. The hero decided that it was time to choose the history of the past. He still had not decided on the choice of villain. They all had unique abilities. He finally confirmed his choice, then shared with the girl that he used to be a big shot in the mafia. He was the second deposed commander. His story happened a long time ago. He was in the Red Scorpion team. Suddenly, the drawing changed abruptly, which frightened the hero. He was part of an organization that was pursuing its own interests. All these stories about the past were too sudden, and Ronnie was seriously frightened. Due to the people who took control of the hero, the organization was divided into smaller factions. And due to countless political strife and slander, he was expelled from the organization by factions. He used to be proud to be bosses, but then he felt ashamed. Ronnie was surprised that he had smoked in the Manhwa once he had come to the Tomb of Death, but he was not sure that anyone could help him. Now he had no choice but to go to the skeleton boss to whom he had previously sworn in the Brotherhood. Coco was delighted with his story. The guy was finally released and everything returned to reality. For the chosen story, he received a profit from the past, as well as a secret mafia room. The note stated that if the real boss of the Red Scorpion was overthrown, then he would be able to be absorbed by the organization without any obstacles. But he was still thinking about how he could join the mafia. He suspected that the shadows would play a big role, but they wouldn't welcome his interference in their affairs. Coco thought it would be even better, since he had sworn an oath in brotherhood to the skeleton boss and they controlled the Tomb of Death. But if they dare to stab them in the back, then all his subordinates will become theirs. Ronnie looked at the girl with different eyes. He videos in her the savior of his story. The hero was happy. He felt that this plan would definitely work. Coco decided to clarify what exactly they needed to find there. He explained that they are looking for a mark in the form of a question mark. It will look like a kiosk, an entourage, like short-sighted heroes in a big city. The girl was angry that he thought that she would flood the alleys. Although it was her forte, she promised to do it only for him and once. It didn't take her a minute to find the information she needed. The hero was surprised at how she got better on the first try and wanted to know more about her. Ronnie knocked on the door of the old man again. He said that he had come for information, and since he did not have a guild badge, the information would be dear to him. Distorted memories of the previous request surfaced. The anger from the 9th chapter returned to him, and he could hardly contain himself. But this time the main character had a ton of money, so he was ready. Although he had his hands in his fists, the elder asked what information he needed. After asking for all the available information on the skeleton boss, as well as his whereabouts, the man walked away and asked to wait. Coco saw the crowd and decided to go there too. The hero hinted that she was a bad player and she would lose again, but they only made a riddle. 3 wishes are given if the participant can guess the answer to the question. Ronnie was immediately distracted by this. He was interested in the fulfillment of 3 wishes. He remembered how Heck had already asked him a similar riddle, and 3 questions earlier in another chapter. He thought that he should also participate. In the crowd, people were surprised at such a generous reward for correctly answering the riddle. Ronnie realized that this character would appear later in the story. The guy asking the question laughed. He had already told them his name. He was a goblin named Chinu. The guy guaranteed to fulfill 3 wishes to the one who could guess his riddle, and in case of loss, they would have to pay the costs. Ronnie knew that guys like this would start appearing when the story reached the eastern lands and didn't know what they could do in the Tomb of Death. The old man called out to him, but the hero was too immersed in his thoughts. He tried to understand why exactly Heck asked him a riddle at the very beginning of the story. The man called the hero again. He had already found the necessary information, threatening that a little more, and he would get rid of it and ask for additional payment. Deciding to start with the location of the skeleton boss, He revealed that there were rumors that he lived in the organization, drinking cold Americano and snacking on chocolate cakes. And also he has no partners and he acts alone. Ronnie was distracted again. The old man shouted and chased him away, since the information was not needed, but the payment was in advance. The man named the amount. The hero asked to repeat, promising to pay everything at once, but after hearing the amount, he was very surprised. The elder demanded a large amount because the information had already been given. The question had been exhausted. He offered to agree or leave. You had to pay more for the time spent. The hero again asked how much he owed, but the man assured that it would be expensive and doubted whether he wanted to check if he had money. Ronnie had already managed to understand that this person was very greedy for money. Coco came up and announced that Chinu had left. The guy was surprised that Mr. Seeming had already managed to leave and wanted to know where, then asked the girl if she could find him. He decided that from now on they work separately. She would search for that guy and ask to catch him by any means and bring him to the hotel. The girl was curious why he wanted her to find China. She wanted to know if they knew each other or not. The hero promised to tell later. She thought for a moment because the goblin was not her type, although she promised to fulfill, and to begin with, she said that she would look into the bank. The hero wondered why she suddenly needed a bank, but she wanted to provide herself with money and was still going to do a couple of things. Coco left, saying goodbye to the hero soon. He waved back to her. Suddenly, the old man said that time was running out, and soon he would get rid of the information. The man asked for payment in advance. Otherwise, he would not tell anything. The hero showed a suitcase with cash and asked to tell him everything slowly and from the very beginning. Noticing that the man hesitated, the hero wondered why he spoke so rudely after receiving so much money, because goodwill is the basis of the service. The elder came out and changed a lot for the better, immediately began to read the text from a piece of paper. The hero asked to put his whole soul and heart into the story. Ronnie arrived at the main skeleton base, a huge building with a skull on the roof. According to the story, they swore a brotherhood to each other. The story of the deposed Red Scorpion commander was the best option. It had been 5 years since he had been kicked out of the organization. This guy had many enemies. Everyone who knew his face was dead. If he didn't use the dark shadow techniques, then they wouldn't chase him. Then Heck came to his mind. He entered there. And also, he was thinking about the guy who would become Leo's fourth partner. He was the owner of the seventh ring. The hero was in a hurry to show everything to readers. The hero approached the tower. The guards met him. Ronnie asked him to tell the boss that his brother had come from the Red Scorpion Oath. A scorpion seal appeared on his cheek. The men bowed, promised to immediately report to the boss, and let the guy into the building. He was immediately met by the boss. Glad to meet my brother. Harry asked how the hero was doing and offered to go inside. Soon the guy admitted that he planned to crush the entire organization of scorpions. The man admitted that he had heard the news, and he already knew that the hero would tell him this, but he wondered if he had enough strength to seize the organization. Ronnie assured him that there was no need to worry about him. He just needed help from the man, who was afraid that he would have to mess with the boss of the Scorpions. But Harry was not delighted that the hero was asking him for help. He reminded him that although they were brothers by oath, they were not blood relatives. He hinted that the members of the Alliance were also a kind of family, but he was not ready to help him. In addition, he was sure that the hero could cope alone. The sworn brother wondered why the hero did not want to stay in the shadows and live in peace, but Ronnie realized that Harry was just mocking, so he accepted him so easily. The guy did not understand what to do now, so he hinted to the man that he advised him to contact the boss before he finally lost his temper. Thanks to his unique ability, he turned the place they were in into an enclosed room that could not be opened from the outside. Ronnie hoped that he would do without unnecessary problems and just go to the Scorpion, but first he decided to deal with Harry and then take the skeletons. Meanwhile, Coco ran after China until she eventually caught up to him and asked him not to run away anymore because she couldn't keep up with him. The girl smiled sweetly and told him that she liked him and then invited him to go and drink coffee. Chinu was surprised that she could see him. Coco didn't understand what he was talking about. Otherwise, how would she have talked to him? But he was sure that he was using ghost walking. She once again asked if he wanted to have coffee with her, but the guy was not interested and also said that he had no reason to go with her. But Coco was not going to give up. After she asked if he really liked games, because he had said so before, Jinu realized that she had seen his tricks earlier on the street. The girl confirmed that she had seen him earlier, but she was also whispered that he was a goblin. The guy was surprised by what he heard. Coco said that her friend asked to bring him. China definitely did not expect to hear her words. He was shocked, and he became very curious who this person was, and asked to take him as soon as possible to him. Goblins are a unique race that cannot control their curiosity. They can rarely be found as they prefer to hide from humans. Meanwhile, the hero and Harry were still in the cage. The man wondered if he was doing all this because he couldn't put up with it. Assuming that smart thoughts left the guy after he was expelled from the organization, he suggested that he try and guess where he was. Ronnie knew that since the man was also the boss of a mafia group, then he had distinguished himself in some way. He had already met such people in a big city. Then he thought that he would die. Suddenly, Harry tried to strike at the hero, which made Ronnie wonder how an additional character could bluff like that, but was able to repel the attack. The boss stated that he was an official character, but the hero felt that it was rude of him not to show up in the book, since it took him so many scenes to tell stories about the past. After all, readers hate to be disappointed. Harry begged for help. But the hero had already set his sights on removing the ring from his finger. The man shouted that he would never be able to give it back. Ronnie was angry that the man had stated that she would never give the ring back, then noticed that even at that moment the cutscenes were getting bigger. The man sobbed, said that his ring was his nobility. The hero realized that Harry's mind was controlled. The reason why the seventh ring was able to control the mafia was because the ring could control minds. As soon as the hero took the ring off his finger, the man continued to cry for some time and asked to return the ring to him, but suddenly stopped at one point. At first, he did not understand where he was, but as soon as he came to his senses, he immediately thanked the hero for saving him from the spell of the seventh ring. Ronnie realized that Harry had behaved unworthily under the weight of the ring, but his target was the one who had put the ring on the man, and he really wanted to deal with him. The hero hinted that the man saw how strong he was, so he asked to tell where the villain was, which is why he chose the second commander for himself. The guy began to think about whether the situation among the mafia groups would heat up more if he killed the skeleton boss, because you can take possession of the ring without a backstory. He was sure that the man knew where the villain was. Harry admitted that there was a small shopping center on the street corner and that he was in room 204. Happy to have received the information, he thought about the fact that the concept of the character was not yet finished, although a lot of action environments had already been added. After warning the man to sit quietly and not throw anything away, the hero promised to return and beat him if he did something. Ronnie got to the right place. He opened the door to see who was inside. He found the owner of the seventh ring, whom he had seen in the manhwa. Jumping abruptly into the room, Ronnie greeted Mr. Devil, which frightened the man, and then hit him on the neck and said that he had come to defeat him. It was not difficult to lay the only owner of the seventh ring on his back. Literally, from one blow, he was already lying on the floor. This man controlled the mafia and was an important shot. In order to get his abilities, one had to wait until the body became weak enough. Just as Ronnie was about to take the ring off him, Heck suddenly appeared behind the door, greeting him. The hero immediately recognized him by his voice. The goblin was surprised to see the hero again. He couldn't figure out who Ronnie was, because he was definitely not just a petty thief. Heck took a small dagger from his jacket pocket and declared that the hero would not leave him today until he had all the answers to his questions. Ronnie was delighted with this state of affairs. He was thinking of making a contract with the goblin, while he could not reveal his identity to a stranger. The villain grinned, assumed that the hero wants him to reveal his identity, believing that such a weakling as he would not dare to do this. The hero knew a lot about him, that he was a respected member of the Dark Shadow and an ardent goblin follower, then invited him to join his team, informing him that if he did so and helped him, he would give him a hint, but Heck became angry, suggesting that he torture the hero until he cracked. Ronnie now had a ring of domination on his hand. The goblin nervously asked what he wanted from him. The hero lowered the blade with his hand and asked to become his partner. The goblin did not expect to hear such an offer. The hero asked if he knew the guys who came to the city today: Leo, Kira, and the Queen of Goldham City. After all, the entire mafia was watching them now, and the hero was sure that they were not able to compete with them now. Heck was offended. He read that they had power. In his opinion, the Dark Shadow was different from other organizations, and their specialization was secret murders. Ronnie could not understand why the villain was telling it here. All the members of the Dark Shadow were professional assassins who could stick a knife in the neck of an opponent. The hero learned that this was a line from his speech to Leo. The blonde believed that secret murders were mean, and his friend with red hair was sure that it would be tense, but one should not expect mercy from the mafia. The Dark Shadow was about to destroy the boys, and suddenly a fairy appeared, able to adjust the probability of the effects used by the target. The queen struck the goblin, knocking him out, and his chance of reappearing further was adjusted by the fairy. Ronnie was very upset when he realized that Heck's screen time would be practically reduced to 0 from that moment on. The goblin noticed the guy's strange look. Heck was sure that the guy would not win, even if he gathered all the mafiosi here, then wondered how he could be so self-confident. The hero knew that even the strongest in the Tomb of Death, Heck, was useless, so the other background characters didn't stand a chance. At the same time, it was a good opportunity for Leo to show how strong he is, but his influence at this stage was not yet so strong. He couldn't explain it to Heck yet, but he knew Leo from the beginning, and then wondered if the goblin had seen those guys who flew away from one punch. Ronnie was the only one who was able to survive this. Heck asked if the hero was hinting that the only chance to defeat them was to work together. Although the main character already knew that they would not be able to win, he promised that he would not allow the goblin to remain on the shutters of the original story. After the dark shadow calmed down, he reported that he had gathered several groups of the mafia at the place that the hero pointed out. He was very curious how the guy knew their group so well, to which Ronnie repeated that, as he had promised earlier, after all this, he would reveal his identity. To begin with, he planned to put Leo on a leash of the ordinary mafia. Philip entered the room and said that everything that the hero asked for was ready. It was not a battle. They need to try to drive the heroes out of the city without clashes. The goal is to lure them, Philip confirmed the plan of action. Deciding to explain everything again, Ronnie reported that they would only cross paths with Leo and his comrades twice. They were now in the main chapter area. To begin with, he planned to send ordinary mafiosi. It was more important for them now to create a tense atmosphere, and not an atmosphere for battle. He wanted to show the guys that they were being watched. Kiro noticed that strange guys were looking at them from the moment they arrived at the diner. The members of the Dark Shadow watched them from the window. It seemed to the queen that they were both inside and outside. Kiro had a premonition of trouble, because this is a mafia city. Mysterious shadows slowly appeared from everywhere. Leo tensed a lot. He told his comrades to be on the alert. Everything seemed not very kind to him. The 9th chapter consists of several episodes. The hero's score will be given after the end of all episodes. The chapters became longer. The 2nd episode of the chapter began. The hero was glad that he had enough time to strengthen his position, although he was squeezed between the chapters. Heck was curious why the hero was staring somewhere and muttering something into the void. Ronnie shared that he thought the heroes would arrive soon. The goblin went and checked. He reported that in his opinion, they were slowly but surely approaching the 2nd zone of operation. Ronnie was glad that Heck was able to find Leo, which meant that everything was ready, then asked to call El Viego for the next convocation of the Alliance members. Once a member of the Goldham City Mafia, Heck wondered if they really needed this man for the operation. But it turned out that he was one of those whom their team would take as a reward. The goblin did not understand what reward they were talking about. The hero asked him not to forget about it. Finally done with the plan there, Ronnie decided that he needed to check out the other protagonist of this operation and went to the hotel. China was very annoyed by Coco. The girl even covered her ears. He tried to describe her in 3 words, but she categorically disagreed with his opinion. As soon as Ronnie appeared in the doorway, his girlfriend immediately shouted that the goblin was very strange and acted like an old man, but Chinu felt that she was too young to tell the difference. Finally, the goblin was able to see the one who aroused his curiosity. The hero was surprised. He believed that the guy went all this way for the sake of the girl. He agreed with him because the nice girl offered to drink a cup of tea, but in fact he went after her because she was charming. Coco thought that he was lying, since he simply could not resist her. She believed that no one was capable of refusing a sex bomb in a big city. Chinu was delighted with her, but immediately asked her to end the conversation because he really wanted his curiosity to be satisfied, and Ronnie agreed. At first, delighted that the hero was ready to answer his question, he was immediately interrupted because he could not get information for free. Ronnie offered the goblin to play a game, putting their wishes at stake. With this suggestion, he was very interested. His desire to play awakened the monster in him. He immediately wanted to know what game the hero offered to play. The guy offered a simple question-answer game. They take turns asking questions. The first one who could not answer lost. The goblin agreed, asking if he would ask the right questions. The hero noted that he had no reason to ask meaningless questions, which made Jinu clapping his hands happily. The goblin immediately laid out his board for the game. He hinted that the hero could have problems. They had 2 choices, either life for the game or a game for life. Ronnie hadn't expected the goblin to use a unique ability for such a thing, but Chinu believed that the greater the tension, the more interesting the game. Coco approached the hero and shared her fears, because they had recently left the city with the casino, and he had taken up gambling again. But the hero was inspired, asking her not to worry because she had come all the way to bring him here, so he couldn't miss such an opportunity. Then he asked her to rely on him, because his main duty is to be the brain of the team. Coco was a little confused. Chinu added that after all, gambling is all about confidence. The hero was going to teach him a lesson. The drawing changed to black and white. The soul of his partner and the queen was languishing. The goblin noticed that the girl started a game with him, not knowing the consequences. He was ready to spare her if she escaped right now. But Siana wanted to continue in exchange for her ability, her life, and her soul. The girl was already crying. Also, she decided to put on the line all the adventures she went through with her comrades. The goblin was delighted and asked her to ask a question. The heroes asked his question in the Tower of Adventures. Rumored to be hidden in Middle-earth, the king sits on top of it. He asked to know his name. The goblin was stunned for a moment. He began to call the dream of an adventurer and a selfless partner. But he did not cite kings as an example. The hero was already happy that he had won and was about to start stating his wishes. But the goblin asked to give him one more minute. The boy was sure that the hero himself did not know the answer to this question. Ronnie immediately named him, since no one knows who the king is, except for the king of adventures himself. Chinu was very upset. He did not expect to be caught so easily. He obediently sat on his knees and asked the hero to make his wishes. But Ronnie did not want to make any special wishes. He just offered to go with him. The goblin did not quite understand what he meant and asked him again. Ronnie clarified that he was asking to accompany him on his adventures. Chinu wanted to know how long he would have to make it and where they were going to go. The guy did not want to answer these questions, noting that he was too curious for the loser, although he thought to himself that the goblin would be with him for a long time. Coco tugged at the hero's hand. She turned to him as she noticed that his face had become as if he had something to tell again. He didn't quite understand what she meant, but the girl clarified that perhaps he was overwhelmed by worries, and then asked if there was anything else to do for her. She wanted to run some more errands for him. Ronnie hadn't expected her to ask him about it. She didn't look like herself. Deciding that he already had a lot on his mind, she asked him to call her as soon as he needed her. The guy assumed that she was going to solve her problems. The girl considered herself his debtor since he saved her. Taking out her clown mask, she asked to let her know if he needed help, because as long as she was wearing this mask, the word defeat did not exist for her. The hero felt a strange feeling. He recognized Coco as his partner and already missed her very much, although before he did not care about others. After all, none of them were real people. They were just characters after all. He was only in manhwa. And Coco was the same. She was just a comic book character, just a girl in the background who would never appear in the plot. He knew that from that moment on she had a difficult path ahead of her. He thought that it was just a forced relationship. Now he understood that it was not so. The girl put her clown mask on his head. She said that at such moments he just needed to ask for help. The 9th chapter continued. Now they were in the place of the main events. The mysterious stubborn Chin was the main character of this chapter. Leo and his teammates were about to be there, and he informed his team that the second phase of the operation was about to begin. This time they would go head-to-head against them. Only Leo and Kira were fighters on the opposing team, but not the Queen of Golden City. He asked them not to fight them separately, but to attack in a heap. The guard asked if he wanted them all to attack together, including the skeletons, and they were surprised that the guy who had just appeared was giving them orders. They had heard that he had been deposed from his position as the leader of the Red Scorpion, so they refused to trust him. Ronnie didn't care. He suggested that everyone who was nervous should leave because he planned to be in the front row. The hero laughed because he had planned it from the very beginning. He was going to be in the front rows and attract all the attention of the audience. Suddenly, the dark shadow found that the guys had entered the alley. He was inspired and led his team, as it was their exit. The queen noticed that the atmosphere of the Tomb of Death was not getting any better, and suddenly Leo heard a familiar voice that called them clever people. The blonde immediately recognized the stubborn Chin. He was surprised that the guy stopped playing in the casino after closing. The queen suspected that he was a secret agent. They were happy to meet him again, but it seemed to them that he had found even more friends than he had previously had in the casino. Ronnie admired their reaction. He could not even imagine that they would remember him. Siana asked him to explain himself, and he said that today they were enemies. The girl did not understand if he meant that he would attack them. Kiro tried to understand why today, and Leo got angry. Then the hero ordered to attack them. Familiar faces appeared in front of Leo, who had become his enemies today. The guys began to fight off their opponents. They fought as best they could. Kira activated his ability of homing devil bullets, which hit the blades of rivals and shattered them to shreds. The protagonist was still angry with the hero, trying to understand what he was thinking, but the target was not the fighters, but the woman who left the casino in Goldham City. Ronnie demanded that they attack her. The Dark Shadow wanted to kill the girl. Someone's blood was spilled. The blades plunged into Leo and Kiro's arm. The girl was very frightened when blood spurted, and the hero was pleased with how the Black Shadow fighters coped. Shiana was scared. Leo screamed in pain, and Kiro asked the girl to stay behind them. She was upset that everything was happening because of her weakness. But Kiro didn't think she was guilty. He thought the attackers were bad people. Leo also noticed how they fought without any ethical standards. Chekhov's gun, which did not fire, noticed that the strong guys were hiding behind buildings. They were the heads of the mafia, as well as those who controlled all of them. They assumed that the main thing was the stubborn Chin. Ronnie was very happy. Finally, he heard the sounds of his popularity. Kiro was furious. Leo agreed with him, promising that the rivals would not get home in one piece. The hero was a little frightened, noticing that the final scene began too quickly. Suddenly, the seventh ring intervened. He thought their words were great, because as long as he existed, the spirit of the mafia would be as good as ever. Ronnie realized that everything was happening too quickly because of him. The story changed because he crushed the seventh ring. Leo activated his ability. He moved very quickly. No one around saw him. The opponents, frightened, ran away from the city. Heck asked the hero if he was sure that everything was under control, but Ronnie believed that their plan did not work, and he needed to change it. The goblin did not expect that there was another plan. The hero did not expect such an outcome, but they could not allow these guys to win and suggested that they fold. The hero believed that they didn't have a single chance of winning, but only until the goblin Chinu appeared with them. Hawk recognized the boy immediately. Chinu was glad that there was someone else who knew him. Then they decided that it was time to stop those guys. Ronnie decided to ask Chinwu if he had heard correctly that goblins could use transformation in the 4 types of Taoist magic. The guy confirmed his knowledge. Then the hero asked if there was a chance to stop the opponents. The goblin admitted that he had failed 20 goblin test battles and therefore was a little confused. As soon as the heroes indulged in the memories of the old days, suddenly he was slashed with a dagger. His cheek was scratched again. Kiro finished smoking his cigarette in the cigarette holder and asked the hero to stay where he was. Because he would soon kill him, the hero believed that the red hair was more like a villain. Chin, meanwhile, was thinking about a plan of action. He was not sure about the man with the gun, but with the blonde, this time, he thought he could handle. The main character approached the goblin and strictly ordered him to block the attacks as if nothing had happened. He asked him to act arrogant, as if he was bragging to someone, and to brag as much as possible. Chinu was frightened by such pressure. Then Ronnie took out a grenade and pulled out a pin from it, shouted to Heck that it was time for them to leave. The goblin had already realized that they had no chance of winning. The hero threw a grenade and announced Plan B. Smoke came out of the grenade. Ronnie asked everyone to disperse and leave the opponents on him. Leo didn't understand what was going on at first. He was holding his left hand with one of the guards. Kiro explained to him that it was just smoke. The guys got together. They stood shoulder to shoulder and shouted to the hero why he was doing it and what he wanted. And Ronnie was very happy to meet them. For a moment, the heroes froze, as they could not understand such a strange change of mood in their opponent, who used to be their friend. Suddenly, it came as a surprise to everyone that Ronnie was smiling and waving at them, saying that he liked to stop the fights and suggested that they end this fight. The blonde was discouraged. He did not understand what the hero was talking about. Because they were the first to attack, they had just entered the city. Ronnie pretended that he had forgotten that they had started the battle, and once they had started, they would be over. But Leo thought that they wanted to buy time to prepare and attack again. The hero tried to convince him that there was a misunderstanding, and also noted that the guys were very strong and they would no longer attack them. Leo thanked him, but suddenly noticed that something was wrong and wanted to know who was in front of him. The queen noted that his manner of speech had also changed. For a second, Ronnie did not understand what they were talking about, what manner of speech they meant, and Leo began to suspect that something was wrong with him. He was confused in his own words. But the main character of the comic suddenly stopped them. He could not let them leave because he had not yet used even half of his power and began to concentrate it. He then jumped and warned the hero to be on the lookout as this attack could burn him to ashes. Ronnie was sorry that the blonde didn't know how to solve everything by talking. Then the blonde struck and hit the hero's palm. Something went wrong, and Ronnie hinted that you can't attack the enemy without knowing about his abilities. After that, he struck a powerful blow to Leo's face, causing him, groaning, to fall to the ground. Blonde assumed that the hero had faked his blow. Ronnie smiled greetingly at the boy as he held onto his cheek, and then winked at him, which only embarrassed the guy more, who began to suspect that he was real. Kira wanted to understand why Leo's electricity didn't work, but the guy believed that it was not the main thing, because the hero faked the blow. The blonde suspected that the hero might be their supporter. Ronnie was glad that he finally understood this, and finally promised that the mafia would not attack them again. He also suggested that they relax. Leo kept wondering if his assumption was possible, since it didn't look like the hero was lying. Their eyes were clear. At parting, the hero asked them not to relax too much anyway, since he had something in store. Returning to reality, the hero was upset. As he considered it a complete failure, Jinwoo was surprised by such a reaction. It seemed to him that everything went perfectly. The goblin believed that the hero appeared coolly and perfectly blocked the blonde's attack. Ronnie claimed that the plan was not originally like that. The hero was upset that Jinwoo didn't use his 5 divine powers, grow trees or raise waves upwards, as he expected him to show them. Coco immediately asked him to create a jet of water, and after that, he grew flowers on his head. Ronnie was no longer surprised that the goblin failed the tests. His manner of speech was recognized. He did not use memorable techniques. All he did was block the first punch. This time he did the best he could, then called out to his comrades asking for permission to hug them and thank them for everything they had done. Despite everything that had happened, only the author knew what would happen in the end, whether he would live or die. The 9th chapter was completed, and the hero rating was updated. Ronnie saw that he received a lot of support from readers, and also attracted the attention of the author. The recognition was increased, and the author's affection decreased. At the same time, the chance of reappearing was increased again. The hero could not understand how he got such a result. A bluff was added to his special capabilities. Irony was very happy that he survived the chapter, that he was able to survive. From joy, he hugged his comrades again. Coco was not too happy about this reaction and tried to get out of it by hitting him in the face. Corone was glad that his adventure was not over here yet. The decrease in the author's affection meant that the author was angry. Because the length of the story had sharply decreased, Heck was tracking the hero. So it was akin to a warning not to stand out too much. But he felt sorry for the author because he had not yet finished being mischievous. In the morning, he went out into the city again and thought about where to go. Yesterday, he was very surprised. Suddenly, a goblin Heck approached him with a bag. He threw the bag on the ground. The hero asked what he had brought, and was also surprised that he did not return to the main headquarters. Gogol said that he had brought a reward for yesterday. In the bag was a gift from the Queen of the Golden City Casino. The 10th chapter began. The Killers of the Black Shadow. Ronnie did not expect that the chapters were going at such a speed. The hero also noticed that the name of the chapter had also changed. The Heck noted that very soon they would become the target of the Black Shadow. He simply shared the information. He then hinted that if he was going to protect his comrades, he should make sure he was safe, and then bought that he enjoyed seeing him. But the hero was already on his way to these guys. He came to the tavern, opened the door with his foot. The guys immediately recognized him. They also saw a bag on his shoulder. They were surprised that he had found the place, with Kiro asking him to stay where he was, and Leo still couldn't figure out who he was. But they were all wondering why he had come there. The girl wanted to know what was in the bag, and Kiro was curious if he was a member of the mafia or a secret agent. They attacked him with numerous questions, from which he had to stop them and ask them to speak in turn, as he also wanted to talk.